Hello, my name is Jeremy McHone. Today we're going to talk about EEO laws and their purpose, and we're also going to talk about some of the laws that are in place. This is a discussion on the laws and other regulations related to the fair treatment of employees. The EEO stands for Equal Employment Opportunity. EEO was started to focus on the fair treatment of individuals in the workplace. EEO laws and executive orders are intended to eliminate discrimination in the workplace. The discrimination definition is important here is treating people differently in employment situations because of characteristics such as race, color, and gender that have nothing to do with their ability to perform their particular job. One of the ways that the EEO laws are developed and implemented is through Congress. The laws are lobbied to address social or economic problems. Then once the law is passed, Congress has an enforcement agency to oversee the compliance of the laws. The companies then have guidelines and regulations that are set up through the different agencies. Employers are also required to have compliance to these laws, and if they are found to be non-compliant, the courts will hear the case of the violations or listen to the different interpretations of the law to make sure that it's being interpreted correctly and to see who benefits the complainer or the employer. Some of the protected classifications are as follows: race, sex, including gender, identity, and sexual orientation, religion, color, national origin, age, 40 years old or older, disability, veteran status, pregnancy, and genetic information. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act was made. Before 1963, employers could consider the gender and the marital status of the employees they were looking to hire. And of course, during these times, they would hire more males than females due to the fact that females may get pregnant or need time away from work. In 1963, Congress made it clear to employees that such pay differences were no longer acceptable when it passed the Equal Pay Act, an amendment to the Fair Labor Act of 1938, and established general guidelines for employee pay, but the EPA specified that gender could not be a factor in paying employees. Then we have the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, or the ADA. It prohibits employment discrimination of individuals aged 40 or older. All employers of 20 or more employees, including employment agencies and labor organizations, federal, state, and local governments and school districts enforced by the EOC, must adhere to these guidelines. That's a good thing for me. Then you have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, and sex. This includes gender identity and sexual orientation or national origin. Established the EEOC as an enforcement agency for this law. And this is in race related to characteristics or conditions of a certain race, or of harassment of a certain race, or toleration of harassment because of a race, are some of the violations of this, and even segregation of a race in different employment classifications or examples. Title I of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, and ADA Amendment Act of 2008, ADAA, prohibits discrimination in employment practices against qualified individuals with disabilities who can perform a job with or without reasonable accommodations. Another one is gender discrimination, or Title VII. Title VII makes it unlawful for an employer to discriminate on the basis of gender in employment situation or opportunity. Then there's also gender plus discrimination. This is generally in between men and women, and gender plus discrimination, an example of that would be not hiring a woman with preschool aged children and hiring a male that does have preschool aged children, due to the fact that the male may have the wife or the woman that would go and take care of them if they needed to be picked up from school or anything like that having to do with their medical attention for the children that might take away from the employment. Sexual harassment is the third form of gender discrimination in Title VII. A big one here is the quid pro quo harassment, something that which basically means something for something, and unwelcome advances or request for submission to such contact is made either explicitly or implicitly as a term or condition of an individual's employment. Another example of this is submission or rejection to such conduct by an individual is used as an abasement for employment decisions affecting the individual's employment, and the conduct has the purpose or effect of reasonably interfering with an individual's work performance. Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978, or PDA, is pretty straightforward. The purpose of the act is to prohibit employees from discriminating against women because of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. This is a pretty straightforward, and obviously it's to keep employees from not hiring pregnant women so they wouldn't have to miss work or any kind of medical situations they may incur during or after the pregnancy. Keep them from being able to show up at work or do their job reasonably. And then Christians making a difference in struggles in human resources. This is a big topic as we know that human resources are pretty strict on the hiring policies, and Christians are pretty strict on their faith as well. And I did come across some good examples of what that might look like, and through a normal lens, through some companies, as how they would look at the hiring process would be one great person equals three good people. For an example, a store hires only great employees. And then since get at least a 3 times return on investment, some stores pay 50% to 100% higher than average than retail salary. Then basically through a Christian lens, each person is created by God in his image, and each person is gifted by God in a unique personality, strengths, and interests. Each person is loved and valued by God, purchased at the price of his son. That meaning that would overlook some of the things that normal hiring would look at. And another example of this is, if as God's steward, you must take care to hire the right person to help his company succeed. At the same time, remember that God sometimes uses the weak and insignificant things in the world's eyes. Something to remember, human resources. Which brings us to the end. Thank you all for listening to my discussion today. Have a good night.